Hey, Reddit. Guess I never thought I'd be here airing out my personal life, but after everything that's gone down, I need to get this off my chest. Buckle up, because this story's got more twists than a soap opera. So, my name's Matt. I'm 38, been married to my wife, Laura, 35, for 9 years. Together, we got 2 great kids, Olivia, who's 8, and Max, who just turned 6. Life was solid, or so I thought. We weren't perfect, but who is after nearly a decade of marriage? We had the usual spats, forgotten anniversaries, disagreements over how much Laura spent on home decor, me working late too often, but nothing that screamed red flag. I work as a construction foreman. Started out swinging a hammer and worked my way up. Pays well enough that Laura could scale back to part-time at her corporate job, so she could spend more time with the kids. We bought a nice house with backyard big enough for a trampoline and got a dog. Cooper, a goofy golden retriever who thinks he's a lap dog. We were living that classic suburban dream. Or so I thought. Looking back, maybe I should have noticed the signs. Laura started going to these self-improvement workshops with her friend Karen. Divorced twice, self-proclaimed relationship expert, and a walking red flag if you ask me. At first, it seemed harmless. But then Laura started using words like personal growth and rediscover myself more often than I was comfortable with. Then there was Alex, her new supervisor at work. I first heard his name when Laura casually mentioned how he really knows how to motivate people. Then came the random comments. Alex has such a fresh perspective. Or, Alex gave me the best advice on handling stress. I joked once about her having a work husband, and she laughed, just a little too awkwardly. Still, I brushed it off. Maybe I was overthinking things. That is, until the conversation. It happened on a random Tuesday night. I was in the garage, halfway through tuning up the lawnmower, when Laura appeared in the doorway. She had that look, like she'd been rehearsing something in her head for days, and finally worked up the nerve to say it. "Matt, can we talk?" she asked, shifting from foot to foot. "Sure," I said, wiping grease from my hands. "Everything okay?" She hesitated just long enough for my stomach to drop. "I've been thinking, maybe we should try living apart for a while." The wrench slipped from my hand and clattered onto the concrete. "Come again?" "Not a separation," she rushed to add. "Just living apart together. It's this concept where couples maintain separate homes but stay married. It gives both partners space to grow individually while still being committed to each other." I stared at her, half expecting Ashton Kutcher to jump out and yell, "You've been punked." But no, she was serious. "Where's this coming from?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "It's something Karen introduced me to," she said. She said it saved her second marriage. And I've read articles about couples in Europe who swear by it. It's supposed to reduce tension and help both partners reconnect with themselves. "Let me get this straight," I said, crossing my arms. "You want us to live in separate houses, raise our kids in 2 different places, and somehow that's supposed to bring us closer?" "It's not about distance," she insisted. "It's about creating space to appreciate each other more. We could still see each other, go on dates, spend weekends together, just without the day-to-day stress." I ran a hand through my hair, trying to wrap my head around it. "And where are you planning to live?" "I've been looking at apartments near work," she admitted. "Nothing set in stone, but I think it'd be good for us. And for the kids." That last part hit me like a gut punch. Good for the kids? I repeated. How is splitting up their parents' home supposed to be good for them? "Matt, I'm not suggesting divorce," she said quickly. "I love you. I love our family. I need space to figure out who I am outside of being a wife and mom." I stood there, heart pounding, as the weight of her words settled over me. Part of me wanted to yell, to demand answers, to accuse her of wanting out without actually saying the word. But another part of me, the rational, level-headed guy I prided myself on being, knew that blowing up wouldn't solve anything. "All right," I said finally, "let's sit down and talk this through. Logistically, financially, everything." Laura blinked, clearly not expecting me to react so calmly. "You're okay with this?" "I'm not okay with it," I said, "but if this is what you think we need, I'm willing to hear you out. But we're not doing anything half-baked. If we're going to try this, we need a solid plan. Custody schedules, finances, holidays, the works." "Of course," she said, her shoulders relaxing slightly. "I knew you'd understand." That night, after the kids were in bed, we sat at the kitchen table with notebooks and laptops, outlining what this living apart together setup would actually look like. I approached it like a project at work. Organized, methodical, focused on the numbers. All right, I said, opening a spreadsheet I'd thrown together. Let's break down the costs. Rent for a second apartment, utilities, groceries, transportation. Wait, you're making a budget? Laura asked, surprised. Of course, I replied. Living in 2 homes isn't cheap. If we're going to do this, we need to make sure we can afford it without draining our savings or affecting the kids' quality of life. Her smile wavered slightly, but she nodded. That makes sense. I kept my tone neutral as I continued. So, where exactly are you looking to move? There's this apartment complex called Maple Grove, she said, flipping open her phone to show me the website. It's close to work, and they have nice amenities. Pool, gym, pet-friendly. I scanned the page, my gut tightening. Maple Grove wasn't just close to her office. It was a stone's throw from Alex's condo. But I kept my expression blank. No accusations. Not yet. And the kids. I asked, they'll need bedrooms, right? Well, she hesitated. I was thinking maybe they could stay here most of the time. It would be more stable for them, and I could visit regularly. Sleepovers on weekends, holidays, that kind of thing. I set down my pen and met her gaze. So, you want space to rediscover yourself, but I'm the one who's going to be the full-time parent? It's not like that, she said quickly. I just think it would be easier for them. Less disruption, you know? Uh-huh. I leaned back, folded my arms as I let the silence stretch between us. She shifted in her chair, fiddling with the corner of her notebook. This doesn't have to be a bad thing, Matt. It could be a fresh start for both of us. Right? I said slowly. A fresh start. But in the back of my mind, the pieces were already starting to click into place. Her sudden need for space. The apartment near Alex's condo. The way she seemed more concerned with her own freedom than with how this would affect the kids. Yeah, something was definitely off. And I was going to find out exactly what it was. The weeks that followed were a blur of logistics, late-night conversations, and forced smiles for kids. Laura found an apartment at Maple Grove faster than I expected, almost as if she'd been planning it long before our conversation. I tried not to jump to conclusions, but that knot of suspicion in my gut wouldn't go away. We told Olivia and Max about the new arrangement one Friday evening after dinner. Laura kept her tone light, using words like adventure and 2 homes as if we were offering them a second Christmas. Olivia, being the more perceptive of the two, frowned and clutched my hand. Why can't Mommy just stay here? She asked. It's just for a little while, sweetheart, Laura assured her. We're still family. Mommy just needs a little space to think and recharge. But we'll still see each other all the time, I promise. Max, too young to fully understand, just nodded and asked if Cooper the dog would get to visit both houses. I forced a smile, but inside, I felt like a fraud. By the end of the weekend, Laura had packed her things, just the essentials, she claimed. Yet, the closets looked noticeably emptier, and the absence of her perfume in the bathroom hit harder than I expected. When she hugged the kids goodbye, promising she'd see them in a few days, my heart clenched. As I stood at the doorway, watching her load the last suitcase into her car, I asked a question that had been gnawing at me for weeks. This isn't about finding space, is it? She paused, her hand on the car door. For a moment, I thought she might come clean. But then she just smiled that tight, practiced smile that never quite reached her eyes. Nat, you're overthinking things. This is just a chance for us both to breathe. Trust me, it'll make us stronger in the long run. With that, she drove away, leaving me standing in the driveway with Cooper at my side. His ears drooped as if he sensed a shift in the air. Yeah, boy, I muttered, scratching behind his ears. Something doesn't feel right, does it? The first week without Laura was harder than I expected. Mornings became a chaotic scramble of packing lunches, finding missing shoes, and wrestling Max into his car seat. Evenings were quieter, lonelier. After the kids went to bed, I'd sit in the living room, staring at the empty spot on the couch where Laura used to curl up with her tea. Still, I tried to focus on the positives. I had more time with Olivia and Max, real, uninterrupted time without the tension that had crept into our marriage. I helped Olivia with her math homework, taught Max how to ride his bike without training wheels, and even let them have ice cream for dinner one Friday night, just because I could. But no matter how hard I tried to convince myself that this new arrangement was temporary, that nagging doubt never left me. Then came the phone call that changed everything. It was a Thursday evening, and I was helping Olivia build a Lego castle, while Max tried to get Cooper to sit still long enough to wear a superhero cape. My phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. I wiped my hands on a dish towel and picked up without checking the caller ID. "Hello. Hey, Matt. It's Karen." My stomach dropped. Laura's best friend, the self-proclaimed expert on relationships, and the woman who'd first planted the idea of living apart together in Laura's head. "Karen, what can I do for you?" I asked, keeping my voice neutral. There was a pause, just long enough to make my pulse quicken. "Look, I probably shouldn't be calling," she said, "but I thought you should know. I saw Laura the other night, at a restaurant, with Alex." My grip tightened on the phone. "Are you sure?" "Positive. It wasn't just a casual dinner, Matt. They were holding hands. And the way they looked at each other, I'm sorry, but it didn't seem like just co-workers. The room seemed to tilt beneath me. I pressed a hand to the counter to steady myself, my mind racing. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked, my voice rough. "Because you deserve to know the truth," she said softly. I didn't agree with Laura's idea to move out, but I never thought it would come to this. "I'm so sorry, Matt." I ended the call without another word. For a long moment, I stood there, the hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of cartoons from the living room, the only sounds in the house. My heart pounded against my ribs as I tried to process what I just heard. Laura and Alex. That night, after the kids were asleep, I sat at the kitchen table with a glass of whiskey, staring at the framed family photos on the wall. Smiling faces, happy moments frozen in time, now tainted by the knowledge that everything I thought I'd built was crumbling beneath me. I knew I needed proof. Confronting Laura without evidence would only lead to denial and excuses. So, against every instinct, I did something I never thought I'd do. I drove to Maple Grove. The apartment complex loomed in the darkness, its windows glowing like scattered stars. I parked across the street, engine off, lights dimmed. I wasn't proud of what I was doing, but I needed the truth. Minutes stretched into an hour. My mind cycled through 1,000 possibilities. Maybe Karen was mistaken. Maybe there was a logical explanation. But deep down, I already knew the truth. Then I saw them, Laura and Alex, stepping out of the building's side entrance. She wore the red blouse I'd bought her for our anniversary, her hand resting on his arm as they walked toward his car. They paused beside the vehicle, laughing softly before she leaned in and kissed him. My stomach twisted into a knot. So tight, I thought I might be sick. My hands clenched the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. Every muscle in my body locked in place as I watched the woman I loved betray me in plain sight. They drove off together, leaving me sitting in the dark with nothing but the sound of my ragged breathing and the distant hum of traffic. I don't remember driving home. All I know is that by the time I pulled into the driveway, something inside me had broken beyond repair. The next morning, I moved to the motions of making breakfast and packing lunches like a man in a fog. Olivia noticed, of course. She always did. "Daddy, are you okay?" she asked, tugging on my sleeve. I forced a smile and knelt beside her, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "I'm okay, sweetheart. Just a little tired." She studied me with those wide, knowing eyes, and for a moment, I wondered if she sensed that everything was about to change. That evening, after dropping the kids off at my parents' house for the weekend, I drove to Maple Grove. This time, I didn't wait outside. I marched up to her apartment, my pulse hammering in my ears as I knocked on the door. When Laura opened it, her eyes widened in surprise. "Matt, what are you doing here?" "We need to talk," I said, stepping past her into the apartment before she could stop me. "Matt, Don't." I cut her off. "I know. I saw you and Alex." Her face went pale, and for a moment, she just stood there, eyes darting as if searching for an escape. "I didn't mean for it to happen," she whispered. "Save it." I snapped. "I want the truth. All of it. Right now." And as the tears began to fall, the truth came tumbling out, every word driving another nail into the coffin of the life we'd built together. Laura stood frozen in the doorway of her apartment, her face pale as her eyes darted toward mine, wide with shock, fear, and something else I couldn't quite name. Guilt, maybe, or regret. But neither mattered now, not after what I'd seen. "Matt, please, let me explain," she whispered. "Explain?" I stepped past her into the apartment, my pulse hammering in my ears. "I saw you, Laura. I saw you with him." Her lips parted, as if searching for words that could undo the damage. But there weren't any. The air between us hung thick with unspoken truths. "How long has this been going on?" My voice was low, strained with the effort to stay calm. Her hands twisted together at her waist, a nervous habit I'd seen countless times before. 6 months, she admitted, barely above a whisper. The breath left my lungs as if I'd been punched. I turned away, pacing toward the window, staring out at the distant city lights. 6 months. While I'd been at home raising our kids, while I'd been clinging to the hope that this living apart arrangement would somehow fix us, she'd been with him. Was this why you want to move out? I asked, my voice rough. No, I swear, Matt, it wasn't like that at first. I really did need space. I needed to figure things out. Figure things out? I spun to face her, the anger I'd been holding back rising like a tide. So you figured things out by sleeping with your coworker? Tears welled in her eyes. I never meant for it to happen. I didn't plan this. But after I moved out, Alex was there. He listened. He understood what I was going through. And, I don't know, Matt, I got caught up in something I didn't know how to stop. I stared at her, searching for any trace of the woman I'd married, the woman who'd once promised to love me through better or worse. But all I saw now was a stranger. So what now? I asked coldly. You've had your fun. What happens next? Do you want a divorce? Full custody? What's the end game here, Laura? I don't know, she whispered, tears spilling down her cheeks. I never wanted to hurt you or the kids. I swear I didn't. Well, congratulations, I said bitterly. Because you did. I turned toward the door, my chest tight with the need to escape before the weight of everything crushed me. But her voice stopped me in my tracks. Matt, please, don't tell the kids like this. They don't need to know the details. We can figure out how to explain things together. Together? I barked a laugh, shaking my head. There is no together anymore, Laura. Without another word, I stepped out into the hallway and shut the door behind me. I drove without a destination, headlights slicing through the darkness as I tried to make sense of the mess my life had become. My phone buzzed on the passenger seat. Texts from Laura, no doubt, but I ignored them. The hum of the engine was the only sound I could focus on. By the time I pulled into my driveway, the house loomed before me like a shell of the life I thought I'd built. Cooper greeted me at the door, tail wagging, sensing attention but offering silent comfort. I crouched beside him, scratching behind his ears as my chest heaved with emotions too heavy to name. You're the only one who hasn't let me down, buddy. I whispered. Upstairs, the kids were fast asleep, blissfully unaware that their world was about to change forever. I stood in the doorway of Olivia's room, watching her chest rise and fall with each peaceful breath. Max clutched his stuffed dinosaur beneath his chin, his curls tousled against the pillow. God, how was I going to tell them? The next day, I called in sick to work and spent the morning researching divorce lawyers. Each click of the mouse felt like another nail in the coffin of my marriage. By noon, I'd scheduled a consultation with a lawyer named Rebecca Green, highly recommended, no nonsense, and known for fighting hard for Father's rights. I spent the rest of the day preparing, gathering financial documents, bank statements, mortgage paperwork. I wasn't about to let Laura walk away with everything, not after what she'd done. And as for the kids, I'd fight tooth and nail to make sure they stayed with me. By the time I picked them up from my parents' house that evening, the weight of the future sat heavy on my shoulders. But seeing their faces, innocent, trusting, strengthened my resolve. Hey, Dad. Olivia beamed as she climbed into the back seat. Guess what? Grandma let us make cookies. I made one shaped like a dinosaur, and I made one that looks like Cooper. Max chimed in proudly. I forced a smile, my heart aching with the knowledge that their world was about to be turned upside down. That sounds awesome, guys. Maybe we can make cookies together this weekend, huh? Yeah, they cheered in unison, their laughter momentarily easing the ache in my chest. That night, after I tucked them into bed, I sat at the kitchen table, nursing a glass of whiskey as I stared at the papers spread out before me. Custody agreements, asset division, child support. It all felt cold and clinical, a stark contrast to the warmth and laughter this house had once known. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Laura. Laura, please, Matt, can we at least talk before you make any decisions? I stared at the screen, my thumb hovering over the keyboard. Every part of me wanted to tell her exactly what I thought of her and her mistake. But another part of me, the part that still remembered the woman I'd fallen in love with, hesitated. Finally, I typed a single response. Me, we'll talk. But not for us, for the kids. The next evening, I met Laura at a neutral location, a small cafe halfway between her apartment and our house. I chose a booth near the back, away from curious eyes. The air smelled of coffee and freshly baked bread, but I could barely taste the bitter brew in front of me. Laura arrived 10 minutes late, her eyes puffy from crying. She slid into the seat across from me, hands wrapped tightly around her coffee mug. "Thank you for meeting me," she said softly. "Let's get to the point," I replied, my voice cold but controlled. She swallowed hard. "I know I messed up, Matt, and I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. But please, don't let this destroy our family." "Our family," I scoffed. "You destroyed that the moment you decided Alex was worth more than everything we had." Tears welled in her eyes, but I pressed on. "This isn't about us anymore. It's about Olivia and Max, and I'll do whatever it takes to make sure they're okay." "I want what's best for them, too," she insisted. "I don't want to take them away from you, Matt. I want to be part of their lives. I know I made mistakes, but I still love them." For a moment, the anger inside me battled with the faintest flicker of compassion. Whatever else she'd done, she was still their mother. And as much as I wanted to punish her, I couldn't let my anger cloud what was best for the kids. "We'll work out custody through the lawyers," I said finally. "But don't expect me to make this easy on you." She nodded, wiping her eyes. "I understand." Without another word, I stood and left the cafe, the door swinging shut behind me with a finality that echoed in my chest. As I stepped into the night air, the weight on my shoulders felt heavier than ever. But beneath it all, a single thought kept me moving forward. I might have lost my marriage, but I'd be damned if I lost my kids. The weeks following that meeting at the cafe blurred together into a haze of legal consultations, custody negotiations, and late-night whiskey-fueled reflections. Every day felt like a battle, fighting to protect my kids while trying to keep my own sanity intact. The house, once filled with laughter and warmth, now echoed with an emptiness I couldn't shake. Cooper seemed to feel it too. He stuck close to my side whenever I was home, his eyes watching me with silent understanding only a dog could offer. On the nights when the weight of everything became too much, I'd sit on the back porch, whiskey glass in hand, with Cooper resting his head on my knee, as if to say, "I'm still here. I've got you." The hardest part was explaining everything to Olivia and Max. I did my best to shield them from the worst of it, sticking to the script the lawyer recommended. "Mom and Dad are going to live in different places, but we both love you very much." Still, Olivia saw through the cracks. "Is it because of that man from Mommy's work?" she asked one night, her voice small but sharp as a knife. I froze, the air catching my lungs. "Where did you hear that?" "I heard Mommy talking to Aunt Karen," she whispered. She said his name was Alex. I swallowed the lump in my throat and pulled her into my arms. "Listen to me, sweetheart. What happened between Mommy and me? It's grown-up stuff. It's not your fault, and it doesn't change how much we love you." "Okay." She nodded against my chest, but I could feel her tears soaking through my shirt. The custody battle was brutal. Despite Laura's initial promises to keep things civil, her lawyer pushed hard for shared custody, arguing that the kids needed their mother as much as their father. My lawyer, Rebecca, fought back with everything she had. She emphasized the stability I provided, the emotional support the kids needed, and the fact that I'd been their primary caregiver even before Laura moved out. But the court didn't see betrayal the way I did. Adultery didn't automatically mean she was an unfit mother, and no matter how much I wanted to tear her apart in front of the judge, I knew it wouldn't help my case. So I swallowed my anger and focused on what mattered, keeping my kids safe and happy. After weeks of hearings, the judge finally delivered the ruling: shared custody. The kids would live with me during the week and spend weekends with Laura. Holidays would be split, alternating each year. It wasn't the full custody I'd hoped for, but it was enough to keep my world from falling apart completely. Life settled into a new routine, different but manageable. I threw myself into work, pouring every ounce of energy into my construction jobs to keep my mind from dwelling on what I'd lost. Mornings were a whirlwind of packing lunches, tying shoelaces, and chasing Max around the house to get him dressed. Evenings were filled with homework, bedtime stories, and endless questions about why Mommy didn't live with us anymore. Through it all, I did my best to be the rock my kids needed. Some days, it felt like I was holding everything together with duct tape and sheer willpower. Other days, their laughter was enough to remind me that maybe, just maybe, I was to be okay. But Laura, she wasn't making it easy. At first, she stuck to the custody schedule, picking the kids up on Friday evenings and dropping them off Sunday nights. But soon, the excuses started. Hey, Matt, something came up at work. Can you keep the kids this weekend? Or, Alex and I go out of town. Can we swap weekends? I wanted to say no, to force her to take responsibility. But I couldn't bring myself to punish Olivia and Max for her choices. So I became their constant, the one they could rely on when their mother's new life took priority. Everything came to a head one rainy Saturday afternoon. I was supposed to drop the kids off at Laura's apartment, but when I pulled into the parking lot, her car was gone. I waited 10 minutes, then 20. Finally, I called her. Hey, Laura, we're here. Where are you? Oh, Matt, I'm so sorry. I completely forgot. Alex and I are visiting his parents this weekend. Can you keep the kids until tomorrow? My grip tightened on the steering wheel as thunder rumbled overhead. Laura, we agreed on the schedule. You're supposed to have them this weekend. I know. It just slipped my mind. Please, Matt, just this once? I glanced at Olivia and Max in the rearview mirror. Max humming to himself as he played with his toy dinosaur. Olivia staring out the window with a frown. This isn't the first time, Laura. I said, my voice tight with frustration. I'll make it up to them. I promise. Just please. I hung up without another word. That night, after the kids were asleep, I sat in the living room, staring at the fireplace as rain tapped against the windows. Cooper lay at my feet, his head resting on his paws as if he could sense the storm brewing inside me. I tried to be patient, to keep the peace for the kids' sake. But Laura's constant flakiness was starting to take its toll, on me and on them. I could see in Olivia's eyes every time her mom canceled a weekend visit, in the way Max clung to my leg whenever it was time to go to her apartment. Enough was enough. I grabbed my phone and scrolled through my contacts until I found Rebecca's number. Rebecca? It's Matt. I need to talk to you about modifying the custody agreement. The following weeks were a whirlwind of legal filings and court dates as I fought to secure primary custody. I documented every missed visit, every last-minute cancellation, and every broken promise Laura had made to the kids. My lawyer built a solid case, emphasizing the emotional toll it was taking on Olivia and Max. Laura, of course, fought back, arguing that her work schedule and new relationship didn't make her a bad mother. But this time, I didn't hold back. I told the court about the nights the kids cried themselves to sleep when she didn't show up, about the weekend spent waiting by the window for a car that never came. And when the judge asked me why I was fighting so hard, I looked him straight in the eye and said, because my kids deserve better. They deserve a parent who shows up no matter what. And if I have to be both mom and dad to give them that, I will. The final hearing felt like standing on the edge of a cliff, waiting to see if I'd fall or fly. The judge reviewed the evidence, his expression unreadable as he shuffled through the paperwork. After careful consideration, the court awards primary physical custody to the father, Matthew Carter. The mother will have visitation rights every other weekend and one evening per week, with additional time during summer vacations and holidays. Relief crashed over me like a tidal wave. I barely heard the rest of the ruling as I gripped the edge of the table, my heart pounding with mixture of triumph and exhaustion. That night, as I tucked Olivia and Max into bed, I knelt beside them and kissed their foreheads. Daddy's always going to be here, I whispered, no matter what. Olivia wrapped her arms around my neck, holding on tight. I love you, Daddy. I love you too, sweetheart. I whispered, my throat tightened with emotion. As I stood in the doorway, watching them drift off to sleep, a sense of peace settled over me for the first time in months. The storm had passed, but I knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, because Laura wasn't done yet. Winning primary custody should have felt like crossing the finish line of a marathon, exhausted but victorious. But deep down, I knew the fight wasn't over. Laura might have lost this round, but I'd known her long enough to recognize that look in her eyes as we left the courthouse. A mixture of anger, resentment, and something dangerously close to determination. I tried not to dwell on it. Instead, I focused on rebuilding the life my kids and I deserved. The first few weeks after the ruling felt like a breath of fresh air. No more last-minute cancellations, no more broken promises. Olivia and Max settled into the new routine surprisingly well. Olivia seemed more relaxed, and Max's laughter returned, echoing through the house like music I hadn't realized I'd missed. Even Cooper seemed happier, bounding around the backyard with renewed energy, as if sensing the shift in the air. But peace is a fragile thing. It started with phone calls. At first, they were sporadic. Laura checked in on the kids during the week, as the court had allowed. But soon, the calls became more frequent, often late at night when the kids were asleep. "Matt, I just want to talk," she'd say, her voice soft, almost pleading. "There's nothing left to talk about, Laura," I'd reply, keeping my tone as calm as I could. "But we were a family," she'd whisper. "Can't we at least try to fix things?" Each call chipped away at my resolve. Part of me wanted to yell, to remind her of the choices she'd made. But another part, the part that remembered the woman I'd once loved, found it hard to ignore the sadness in her voice. I thought I could handle it. Until the night she showed up at my door. It was a Friday evening, just after I put the kids to bed. I was in the kitchen, cleaning up the remnants of movie night. Popcorn kernels scattered across the counter, half-empty glasses of chocolate milk. Cooper's ears perked up as headlights swept across the front window, followed by the sound of tires crunching on gravel. Frowning, I wiped my hands on a dish towel and headed to the door. The porch light flickered on as I pulled it open, and there she stood. Laura. Her hair clung to her face from the drizzle falling softly around her. She clutched the lapels of her coat, eyes wide and glassy with unshed tears. "Matt, can we talk?" I glanced back toward the hallway, where the faint hum of Olivia's nightlight filtered through the cracked door. Turning back to Laura, I stepped outside, pulling the door shut behind me. "It's late," I said, keeping my voice low. "The kids are asleep." "I know," she whispered. I didn't know where else to go." Something in her voice made me pause. Despite everything, I could ignore the raw emotion in her eyes, the vulnerability that reminded me of the woman I'd once vowed to stand beside through thick and thin. "Laura, what do you want from me?" She swallowed hard, her gaze dropping to the ground. "I messed up, Matt. I know that, and I've paid for it every single day since you walked out that door. I thought I could move on. That Alex was the answer. But he wasn't. He never was." I stared at her, heart hammering against my ribs. "So, what? You're here to say you regret everything, that you want another chance." Tears spilled down her cheeks as she looked up, her eyes searching mine. "I want my family back." For a moment, the world seemed to tilt beneath my feet. The memories rushed in, lazy Sunday mornings with the kids piled in our bed, late-night laughter over shared jokes, the warmth of her hand in mine during family walks through park. But then another image cut through nostalgia. Laura and Alex outside her apartment, their laughter, their kiss. I took a step back, the cold drizzle soaking through my shirt as I shook my head. "No, Laura," I said, my voice firm. "You don't get to come back now just because things didn't work out with him." "Please," she whispered, reaching for my hand. "I still love you." "Stop." I cut her off, pulling my hand away. "You loved me when it was convenient. When things got hard, you ran straight into someone else's arms. And now that it's over, you think you can just come back like nothing happened?" "I was confused," she cried. "I didn't know what I wanted. And I was supposed to wait around until you figured it out?" My voice rose despite my efforts to keep it down. "I begged you to talk to me, Laura, to work through things together. But you chose him. You made your choice." Her shoulders shook with silent sobs as the rain pattered softly around us. For a moment, the only sound was a distant rumble of thunder somewhere beyond the hills. "I just want to be a part of their lives," she whispered. "And you can be," I replied, my voice softening. "But not as my wife, not as my partner. That door closed the night I saw you with him." Her lips parted as if to argue, but she seemed to think better of it. Instead, she nodded slowly, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. "Goodbye, Laura," I said, stepping back toward the door. "Goodbye, Matt," she whispered. As I watched her walk back to her car, part of me ached for the woman I'd married, the woman I thought I'd grow old with. But as her taillights disappeared down the road, the weight on my chest began to lift, because this time, I knew I was finally free. In the months that followed, life slowly began to feel normal again. The kids thrived with the stability of living with me full-time, their laughter filling the house in ways that made the past feel like a distant memory. Olivia joined the school soccer team, scoring her first goal with a proud grin that reminded me so much of her mother. Max discovered a love for dinosaurs, covering his bedroom walls with drawings of T-Rexes and velociraptors. And through it all, Cooper remained my constant companion, chasing squirrels in the backyard, curling up beside me on the couch. His warm brown eyes were a reminder that no matter how hard life got, I wasn't alone. Laura still saw the kids on weekends, though her visits grew less frequent as time passed. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe it was something else. I stopped trying to figure it out, because I'd finally learned that some chapters aren't meant to be rewritten. Sometimes, the only way to move forward is to close the book and start a new one. And as I stood on the back porch one summer evening, watching Olivia and Max chase Cooper across the lawn, I realized something. This wasn't the life I planned. But maybe, just maybe, it was the life I was always meant to live.